We're here with Senator Mike Lee at the Lincoln Day Dinner, and thank you for coming on with us.
Thank you.
Both of us are fans, and my dad's going to be totally jealous that I got to meet you and you were here.
Well, I'm going to have to meet your dad now. That'd be great.
Oh, it's a long road.
I don't know.
And
do you
great
have
conversation with his
do
dad?
you have enough time in your life? But anyways, if you're ever out in Grantsville and you want to go take a look at the Donna Reed Museum, you'll meet him. He does the show down there. But we really can't do the full interview here because obviously you need to go around and meet the constituents of the county. But you're running again.
Indeed.
We've interviewed a couple of your competitors, one Republican, one independent, and we're reaching out to the Democrats. So we want to give you the chance to I guess, continue on with what message you want to put out.
What's your platform this time?
Yeah.
I'm running because the federal government's too big and too expensive. It is that way because it's doing too many things it was never intended or designed to do. We have right now a political establishment that exists in both political parties that wants to continue growing government. Every time government expands, it does so at the expense of individual liberty. This expansion of federal power has been really good for a small handful of elites. It's made the wealthy and the well-connected even more wealthy and more powerful. But it's inured to the detriment of ordinary, hard-working, honest Americans. Poor middle-class Americans who just want to work hard to put food on their table. It's for them that I'm running.
Yeah, most governments seem to be set up so that there's an oligarchy on top, and then you got the peasants on the bottom. I'm still very hopeful that within our lifetime we see a big balance of, the rich and then the working class somewhere leveling out. And I've always thought of you as one of those candidates that's definitely trying to level that playing field.
Sure, and you can have a level playing field in any economy where you've got robust institutions of civil society. That is where families, churches, other non-governmental things exist in which human beings interact, and where you have free markets. But when you don't have those things, you end up having problems. And the more government gets involved, as you say, you end up with oligarchies. Now, you don't want government moving in, trying to redistribute wealth to make things equal. What you do want is a system in which anyone can get ahead. Anyone can have a good idea and work hard and develop something. We want a fair set of rules, even-handedly applied, with a government that understands that its role is limited. As long as you have that, you've got the makings of upward economic mobility. And we're very good at that in this state. Utah has routinely measured as among the highest, often the highest state in terms of upward economic mobility. You can be born into poverty here, or come here as an immigrant, as a refugee, for example, and have the reasonable hope and expectation that one day you work hard, you play by the rules, you can retire comfortably, and in some cases wealthy.
Yeah, and you know what? With the word refugee coming out in the show here, what do you think, or what do you see in the future for the Ukrainian refugees? And what was your reaction to your interview with the president of Ukraine on Zoom?
Yeah. Had a good chat with him this morning. President Zelensky joined me and my colleagues on a video Zoom call. When I hear from or meet with the head of state of a foreign government, usually I see someone dressed in a really nice suit. This guy was appearing to us from half a world away, wearing only a military-issued green t-shirt. He appeared to be in some sort of a basement bunker somewhere inside Ukraine. This guy was in dire circumstances, but he was passionate, very effusive in his expressions of love and fidelity to his own country. Well, look, I don't know the man. I'm not trying to say that he's a Boy Scout or an angel in every way, but he definitely loves his country. And I have to give street cred to any guy who, when offered help from the outside, makes clear, I don't need a ride, I need ammo. That's pretty cool.
He's definitely taking responsibility for whatever is going to happen. And gosh, it worries me because it does not look like it's going good for Ukraine. And I say a prayer every night right now because I've been there before. It's a beautiful country.
As do I. I've never been there, but my heart breaks for the Ukrainian people, and I've been really inspired by things that I've said, uttered by Ukrainian nationals inside the United States and those on the ground inside Ukraine. The mothers handing out sunflower seeds to the Russian soldiers. The people who say, well, they can come on in. I don't know how to use a gun, but I'm really good with a knife, and I'll defend my country. You have to respect those people, and it's tragic. It didn't have to end this way. We didn't have to get to this place. We would never have gotten to this place had the United States been adhering to any kind of sound, rational energy policy.
Yeah, definitely. Why can't we get there?
We can't get there because we have a president who is operating under the delusional belief that he's going to somehow cause the oceans to recede through his policies. And he's not.
We have a party that thinks that way. The whole party seems to be, except for two individuals that seem to buy into that.
And occasionally we have Republicans who will go along with it. And look, it's important to look out for the environment, and I believe that's important. I also believe that it's important. We owe it to ourselves to acknowledge that we have some of the best environmental laws on the whole planet. There may be other planets where they've got more strict ones, but the United States has very good, very conscientious environmental policy. We produce oil and gasoline. Oil and natural gas and all their byproducts, including gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and everything else. We do it in a safer, more environmentally responsible fashion than they do in almost any country that I'm aware of. There is global demand for that. So why shouldn't we be the ones to produce it? Why should we be the ones who are importing 700,000 or 800,000 barrels of oil every year from Russia? Why do we want to be the country whose president on day one cancels oil and gas leasing on federal lands, or cancels a pipeline that would have brought in 800,000 or 900,000 barrels a day of oil from Canada, our friendly neighbor within North America?
How many jobs were lost by citizens the day he signed those two?
It's hard to calculate the total loss of it. And I wish I had a reliable calculation of it. It's a very large number, but more than just the jobs that we can point to, it's the fact that the loss of revenue, the revenue that goes very often to our enemies, whether Russia or countries in the Middle East, or even if it's not going to a country that's our enemy, it might be going to very wealthy people who hate America and will do everything they can to fund its destruction. It should be staying here, and it shouldn't be going to Russian oligarchs. It shouldn't be going to strengthen the hand of Vladimir Putin. That is exactly what we've done. Remember when he did this to Crimea? Meaning Putin.
Yeah.
Putin did this to Crimea 8 years ago. I was on the Armed Services Committee of the Senate at the time, and I made it a point, I was curious. I started asking every official, every high-ranking general, admiral, or other official of the Pentagon who I could get to listen to. I asked, would this ever have happened had we been producing and exporting significant quantities of oil and gas to Europe? The answer to a person was no. I've had that question with people from the State Department, people from the intelligence community. They all say no. He could never, would never have had the kind of economic power or the political power or the military power to do what he did to Crimea or do what he's doing today to other parts of Ukraine if we were just producing and exporting more oil and gas.
The reason I bring up the jobs is that seems to be a big thing that the administration always touts. This is the jobs we've gained. We know the numbers are fudged, but on day one, he eliminated a substantial number, at least in the thousands, tens of thousands.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. At least, I would say at least in the tens of thousands.
Yeah.
And the spillover effects from that are almost incalculable. Think of the lost revenue. The lost revenue going to companies and to the federal government itself. The lost revenue alone and what that could have funded as it was reinvested in the American economy. Instead, we're funding what? More stuff in the Middle East? More stuff in Russia? And those countries, by the way, don't exactly have the strongest environmental record. This is unconscionable. Look, we want to control Putin. Joe Biden wants to control the American people. He's got his priorities way off.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And it does feel that way a lot.
I'm concerned about future moves pushing Putin up against the wall. Because if Putin feels like when who was it that called senator called for his
Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina.
That concerns me. He's got a button. I don't think we should make our declaration that his life needs to end over this. Because if we push him against the wall, then we have to rely on people around him to stop him from enacting worst case scenario.
Right. Now, Lindsey Graham's not here. I'll let him speak for himself. He's got his own style. He's a friend. That's not a statement I would make. It's not my style. It's not the kind of substance I would usually churn out. I do think you're right, and that we've got to be very careful here.
I think
because this is a nuclear-powered adversary.
It's arguably almost as much as we are.
Yeah. What have they got? 4,500 nuclear warheads? That's a lot of warheads.
Yeah.
Big ones too.
Is there any way we can, I don't know, reach out to them and say, hey, come, let's go to the table, I say we need to try to be as diplomatic with him as possible, even if we have to lay down a little bit, because I'm sure right now he's feeling back into a way.
I certainly hope so. He's not subject to the same inputs. What may be rational for him, what would often appear very irrational to us. He's got a pretty small echo chamber. Mm-hmm. He lives in a pretty cloistered bubble.
He's had 20 years to consolidate power, so he's probably not threatened internationally.
Right, and that produces decisions that, at least from the outside, look very irrational, if not insane to us. To him, they might be something different than that. He lives in a very different world, politically and otherwise, than we do. And so I just think we've got to be careful with whatever we do. There's some safeguards built into our system. Safeguards that, if we will follow them, will protect us. One of those safeguards is found in the fact that the president can't take us into war alone. The generals can't do it. Not even the president as commander-in-chief can do it. That power is reserved exclusively for the people's elected lawmakers, for the branch of government most accountable to the people at the most regular intervals, the United States Congress. Not because we're any smarter or any more talented or more expert in the art of making war. It's because we're constitutionally empowered rather than the president, because we're more accountable to the people. And the Founding Fathers understood that this is a very bold, dangerous power. It should not be undertaken for light and transient reasons. So if we are going to engage in war over there, we're going to be involved in any of them. And to my knowledge, not one of my colleagues, not one out of 100 United States senators is advocating for that now. But if we ever do get to that point, it needs to be declared, it needs to be authorized unmistakably by the Congress after debating the whole thing, strategy for getting in and getting out in front of the American people. Whenever we've done that, we've benefited to a significant degree. Remember back in 2013, summer of 2013, President Obama, who was in office at the time, decided that we needed to perhaps go to war in Syria.
Yep.
And to his credit, he said Congress ought to reconvene quickly. We were in our home states at the time, and get briefed on it and figure out whether they're interested in authorizing it. We came together on short notice. I missed my wedding anniversary for it, but flew right back to get briefed. After talking about it, Democrats and Republicans alike, with the officials at the Pentagon, CIA, and elsewhere, we all almost in unison said, no, this is not going to work.
It was beyond that. There was an outcry on Facebook, This is the first time Facebook was used in our nation to stop engagement. I mean, it was the whole nation cried
Yeah.
out for it. It was
He said, we don't need another one of those.
pretty amazing moment.
And part of what helped get us there, when we were being briefed on this, I personally asked generals, other military officials, intelligence experts, what would be our objective? Under what circumstances would we conclude that objective had been realized? How would a are we trying to remove Bashar al-Assad? If we were, how would a post-Assad Syria look? And how confident are we that it would be any more favorable to our interests than present-day Syria? They couldn't answer any of those questions. And on that and other bases that we concluded, on second thought, let's not do that. So that's what ought to happen here. If we ever get close to that, Congress needs to start considering this. My fear here, the reason I raise it, is that if we're not careful, we can start doing things that can set in motion a sequence of events that will inevitably culminate in a war, drawing us into the impetuous vortex of war without us ever intending to do that. That worries me. If we start putting together these long-term, these short-term, high-intensity sanctions that we've imposed with cooperation from European nations, have some potential to do some good. It is noteworthy that it's been in effect now for a week or so. These most recent intense ones, they haven't had their desired effect yet. Doesn't mean that they won't at some point. But the longer we stretch those out, if they're not producing results, we've got to keep monitoring them, because there's always a risk. You leave those things intact for too long, there's some precedent for these things perversely creating the opposite of the result you want. Pushing a military strongman into the loving embrace of another military strongman of another hostile country. I fear that we could do that here if we're not careful, and that could in turn lead to a hot war. And by that I mean a kinetic conflict, which we should not do.
See a European ally get tired of it not working and engage in that as well.
And then pull us in through Article 5 of the NATO treaty.
And then where we are, yeah.
And that would be very bad.
That would be bad.
Also, I heard that China's backed off supporting them, which is good to hear.
Yeah.
For now, I heard China says, well, we're going to, was one of my major fears that we pushed those two together.
Right, yeah, mine as well. And let's hope that proves to be true.
Yeah. We got to let you go. We got a meeting. Thank you so much for
thanks so much.
Sitting down with us.
And I hope to talk to you again.
Yeah,
you're a pretty interesting guy.
We'd like to have we'd like to have even if we got to do it over the internet, another good sit down where you can maybe you can lay out your platform going forward without us having to drift into the World War III topic.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I'll give you a preview right now of what that will entail, and I look forward to having a longer conversation. Focus on restoring constitutionally limited government by reorienting the federal government in the direction of the twin structural protections of the Constitution. Twin structural protections that are as important as any other feature, including any of the Bill of Rights. In fact, they are what makes it possible for us to protect the interests protected by the Bill of Rights. The vertical protection is one we call federalism. It keeps most of the power at the state and local level, where it can't be abused as readily by local officials as it can by national officials. The horizontal protection says that then within that necessarily limited universe of the federal government, we're going to have three branches: one that makes the law, one that enforces the law, one that interprets the law. As long as you keep government decisions at the proper level, vertical versus up versus down on the vertical protection, and as long as on the horizontal spectrum you keep each branch operating within its lane, liberty is likely to be preserved in this country. We've deviated dangerously over the last 85 years under the failed leadership of both political parties.
Oh yeah.
As we push power up from the states to the federal government, moving it away from the people in two steps. First from the people to Washington, then within Washington, from the people's elected lawmakers to unaccountable, unelected bureaucrats. We've thus eroded both federalism and separation of powers almost in one continuous movement. And that's been really good for the wealthy and well-connected, really bad for everybody else. There are, even though it's a complex problem, the solutions are relatively easy. If you just start making Congress vote on new regulations before they can take effect.
I like it.
Which is what the Constitution requires anyway.
I've heard there's been a lot of voice votes in there instead of having counted votes.
Yeah, there are a lot of voice votes. There are also a lot of votes that don't even occur by voice that are what we call unanimous consent. They bring something up, no one objects. Now, much of the time, much of what's passed on the unanimous consent calendar or by voice vote is relatively non-objection. Something recognizing, I don't know, National Sofa Care Week or whatever it is. A lot of that stuff isn't terribly consequential or controversial. But some of it is. And, the way this stuff happens, both vote rooms, Republican and Democratic, will send out an email to all members' offices saying, if you don't want Bill X, Y, and Z to become law, let us know that you object within 15 minutes or half an hour or whatever it is. And a lot of people don't pay attention to what's happening on that, and some bad stuff gets passed. I learned a couple of lessons the hard way during my first few months in office, where I was following that. I instructed my staff to help me follow it. We missed a couple of things, and then I instituted some really aggressive review processes. The point now where nobody holds more legislation than I do. You put a hold on it, you say, I won't do it. Now, it makes a lot of people mad, and people will have mean articles written about you in publication after a publication when you do that. But as a result of that, I stop a lot of bad stuff from becoming law in the first place. And even the stuff I don't stop or can't stop, in many instances, I'm able to change it meaningfully and make it better, make it less bad, make it spend less money, make it create less government, large S, or expand the authority of government and thereby diminish liberty less. I think I've probably changed more pieces of legislation that way than anybody else in the Senate. It doesn't always bring headlines, certainly not headlines that are favorable, but it does make the world freer than it would be otherwise.
Yeah,
I agree.
I like it.
You insist on reading this stuff before you vote on it.
It's a quirk of mine. I'm old-fashioned. Call me crazy. But if I don't have any chance to read it, if I can't at least have the opportunity for my staff to look at it in depth, and for me to walk through it with them and confirm their analysis, then I'm not doing my job. And yet you'd be shocked at how many members of Congress are content with not reading them.
I don't know if I'd be shocked, would you?
You got to pass it to find out what's in it.
Yeah, right.
And there's more truth to that than I realized at the time. That stuff happens far more often than I ever anticipated when I first ran for office.
Well, we got to cut you loose. There are a lot of people here, and it'd be unfair for us to dominate your time all the way. But everyone, Senator Mike Lee, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the effort you've been doing for the state of Utah.
Oh, thank you.
It's impressive.
Thank you.
We're both fans, and
keep the free world free.
Yes,
I'll do my best.
Outstanding.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
Right.
sir.